Hello and welcome back to Principles of Macroeconomics. I'm your host, Dr. B, and we're going to be talking about supply, demand, and government policies. Chapter 6, Week 4, UDC. Oh man, we're in the fall 2021 semester. Time flies when you're having fun. Okay, uh, so let's talk about supply, demand, and government policies. Government policies set a lot of regulation on the market. An example of that is when the government sets taxes. That is a regulation on the market. When a government sets imports and export regulations, that is how government policy affecting the market. We also have these things called price controls. Price controls are very common in things like rent, uh, pharmaceuticals, which are pills from the doctor, uh, uh, Medicare, Medicaid, taxes. These are all forms of price control. Price control is regulating what things can be sold at. An example of this would be rent. There in New York City and in DC and other large metro areas, the local governments typically set these things called rent controls, uh, and they're controlled by the local government. And what that does is it sets a legal maximum price on a good that can be sold. An example of that would be rent. There are maximum rents, right, that they cannot exceed. There are certain percentages that they can't increase by. Like, for example, rent cannot go more than 3% per year in New York City. So that is a form of a price ceiling. They cannot go above that price. A price floor is a legal minimum on the price of a good that can be sold. Uh, an example of that would be minimum wage. Minimum wage, an employer cannot pay you below minimum wage in most cases, with the exception of tipped positions. Taxes. Taxes are are government enforced that make buyers or sellers pay specific amount of taxes on each unit. An example would be sales tax, income tax. The rent goes on and on and on. Okay, so let's take a look at how price controls set by the government have an impact on supply and demand. So the rent control of for an apartment, $800, the market can have 300 units of apartments. The price ceiling is 1,000. So what that tells us is what happens with supply and demand is if there are less units on the market, they still cannot go above 1,000, regardless of how many units are on the market. And there's also a minimum. Uh, it's still following the concept of rent. It can't go below 500, and it can't go above 1,000. Setting it at 800 is almost a form of equilibrium. If there is a floor, the floor would be the minimum price. If the ceiling price goes even lower, there's a change in the ceiling price, that would cause a shortage in the market. So in the long run of rental apartments, they're more price elastic than other types of product because it's housing. So there's a larger shortage if the price ceiling is lower. So when there's a shortage, sellers must ration goods among buyers. We saw this several times in the past. During World War II, there was a rationing of sugar. uh, during and the same during World War One. During the 1970s, there was rationing of gasoline during the gasoline shortage. There's so many different instances. During 2020, during the global pandemic, there was a shortage of things like toilet paper and other food items within the grocery store. So there was a rationing of those types of goods during that shortage. There's so many different examples, but because of shortages, sellers need to ration the goods that they have available for sale. We saw that with water, toilet paper, meat, um, canned goods. Throughout the past year and a half, we saw that happen. Some rationing occurs based off of mechanisms. So rationing causes things like long lines, discrimination across sellers, unfair, inefficient strategies where the goods don't necessarily make it to the buyers who value them the most. Man, this is a classic example, right? We see this right now. There's a shortage of workers. The shortage of workers, there's a couple different reasons for that we're experiencing in 2020, 2021. A lot of it has to do with skills, but it also has to do with shifts in consumer preference. People left certain industries to go to different industries, so on and so on. So there is wages paid to unskilled workers and the quantity of unskilled workers. So the equilibrium, which is where supply and demand equal, $6 per hour, 500 workers. Obviously, this is several years ago. Now it should probably say 15, right? The floor is $5 per hour. The floor is your minimum wage. The $6 per hour is the point of equilibrium. $7.25 per hour is the, I guess now it's the price floor because the price of minimum wage or the minimum wage went up from $5 to $7.25. So the new equilibrium would have to be greater than $7.25. Otherwise, it would be considered illegal. And anything above the $7.25 is considered a labor surplus, or it would be more than enough people to work. Okay. Oh, my hospitality people, you'll like this example, okay? So this example has to do with hotel rooms. Hotel rooms, equilibrium on the graph, we would have 100, right? $100 and 100 rooms. That's our point of equilibrium on this graph, right? So we determine the effect of the prices. If we have a $90 price ceiling, I would never be able to hit the point of equilibrium because it would limit my sales price to $90. I wouldn't be able to go above it. It would cause a shortage of hotel rooms, and I would never be able to maximize my supply. So therefore, I would have a shortage. If it was a $90 price floor, then I would be able to maximize my inventory of hotel rooms, and it would put me in a position where I can ultimately create a surplus. At a $120 price floor, I would never be able to meet that. So let's look at each one. Price ceiling, if I have it at 90, causes a shortage of 30 units. How do we find 30? It's the difference between 120 on the demand curve and the 90 on the supply curve based along the line of the price ceiling, yes? If it was a price floor at 90, everything above would be surplus. and of course, if there was a price floor at 120, I would have a surplus of 60. How do we get 60? It's 120 minus the 60 equals 60, right? So that would be my my surplus. When we evaluate price controls, we look at how the markets are usually done in a way to organize economic activity. Typically, in most cases, economists oppose any type of price ceilings or floors. And a lot of this has to do with the open marketplace, right? We don't economists don't like to put in restrictions on prices. Prices are not the outcome of some haphazard process. In other words, prices are not arbitrarily set. There's typically a reason for a price. Prices are a crucial job of balancing supply and demand. We use prices to specifically coordinate economic activity. What that means is if I set a price for something higher, I'm purposely trying to reduce demand. If I set my prices lower, I'm purposely trying to increase demand. And of course, they both have an impact on supply. Governments can sometimes improve economic market outcomes by controlling certain prices. Oftentimes, the objective of the government is to assist those below the poverty line. And it's usually because of unfair market outcomes that the government needs to assist them through the process of implementing price controls. The only thing is, it hurts the people they're trying to help because what it does, it disincentivizes individuals to prosper within the economy. But there's a flip side to that coin, right? Other ways to help those in need is to provide them with rent subsidies instead of setting price controls, because price controls ultimately they hurt the overall economy by setting price ceilings and floors. So rent subsidies would be a better option. Wage subsidies would be a better option. Taxes are used by the governments to generate revenue for public projects such as new roads, improved roads, schools, national defense. Our taxes get collected for every reason you could imaginable, right? Trash collection, new sidewalks, improved public transportation, you name it, right? Education system, all that jazz. So those are the purpose of taxes is to fund those types of things through the government. There's this thing called tax incidents. I can never say that word right. It's where the burden of a tax is shared among participants in the market. In other words, everyone who works pays income tax. Everyone who purchases something pays sales tax. And all of these taxes are shared among those involved in the market. So the government can make the seller or the buyer pay the tax. Oftentimes it's both, right? So let's look at so tax on buyers, okay? So let's look at pizza, the market for it. At $10 a pizza, I can sell 500 of them. If I and I have a sales tax on it. A sales tax is $1.50 per unit. Tax on the buyers. The people who buy the pizza pay the tax. Okay, the price of that $1.50 is higher than the market price. And so what this represents is if I wanted to cover that tax, I would raise my prices. Or I can drop them to $8.50 and I would still make that $10 at 500 pizzas. And so, but of course, if I drop that price, what happens is my tax revenue also goes down. So if my tax revenue goes down, it's less taxes that the buyer is paying to the government. And the opposite is also true. But if the tax goes down, that's a new point of equilibrium. If the price goes up, again, my equilibrium changes, and I would end up deferring more taxes to the government. So we see what the effect is. Of course, higher sales price, higher amount of tax being tax revenue, and the opposite is also true. When there's a tax on the seller, it's the same concept, same exact concept when there's a tax on the seller or the buyer. What happens is in both cases, $1.50 per pizza is being remitted. Well, it's 50 cents less on the other side, but we see that there's the taxation on both sides. And we can see this effect for, again, those of you in the hospitality industry would like this part. The market for hotel rooms, we know in the hospitality industry that there's multiple taxes, right? We have our hospitality taxes. We got sales tax, we got occupancy tax, we got resort tax, we got other property tax, right? Those are all forms of taxes that the local governments implement on hotels. So on average, you're looking at $30 per room per night in taxes. That's about right. And so how is that derived? Well, $110 at price point 1, price point 2, 80. When there's that when that change, the buyer pays $10 tax, seller pays $20 tax, giving you a $30 tax rate. And that's the difference, of course, between the supply and demand. So, yeah, that's an interesting example. If there's no tax, of course, if there's no tax, it's at the point of equilibrium, but there's always going to be tax. So in most cases, the individual buying pays the majority of the tax burden, and sellers pay a smaller amount of that. Here in the U.S., as I'm sure most of you are aware, when you purchase something from a store and you pay that sales tax, you're paying it to the business. The business then has to pay that tax to the government. So that's what creates tax payable, for those of you who are in my accounting class. Who pays luxury tax? The buyer. Buyer always pays luxury tax. Come on. It's price elastic. It's in the short run. And yeah, the buyer pays most of the tax. Well, the seller does too, I guess, but it's ultimately through the buyer. I'll also talk real quickly about this one. Payroll taxes. Your employer and you pay taxes. The employer pays into your Social Security. They pay into your Medicare. But they also pay unemployment tax. You, the employee, you pay into Social Security. You pay into Medicare. But you also pay state, local, federal tax. So your employer pays into your Social Security, into your Medicare, but they pay unemployment tax, and there's state and federal for that as well. So, in most cases, the employer pays more taxes than the employee. Kind of gives you an idea of what that is, Okay, any questions from the perspective of the government as it relates to supply and demand. Any questions at all? At all, at all, at all?
Well, not at the current time, Dr. B. It's a lot to process to try to figure out how to, retain all the information. So I might have a question or two later on.
Okay, yeah, anytime. Anytime that you have questions as it relates to anything with respect to the class, the content, the way the class is set up, anything on your homework assignments or whatever, you just let me know. Feel free to email me, call me, set up office hours, all of those good things, because I am here for you 100% of the time. Uh, so, yeah, absolutely. Anytime you have questions, just let me know. Anything else? Any comments, questions, concerns? I sincerely appreciate all of you. Thank you so much for staying over and helping us wrap up these 2 chapters. I figured it'd be better that way for you all instead of having you all come back on Wednesday to do it again. So you definitely use the time on Wednesday to do your homework assignments. That's why we do this once a week rather than twice, because I want you all to have that additional time. Because you need it, especially when you got 2 chapters in a week. So I understand you all have other classes as well, so I just want to make sure that you have that time available to you. Um, if you need anything, just let me know. I'm here for you. Okay. If you're still having trouble accessing the My UDC, please try to do it through Firefox. That seems to be the one that works the best, at least for right now. Yeah, I know it's not my fault. I promise I didn't crash the whole system, but it seems like the whole university is having that trouble. So, and I think IT is still working on it, but for right now, just access it through Firefox. Um, and also for those of you who still need access to the textbook, it's there. I got you. Dario hooked us up, right? So if you go to start here and then click course textbook, select that second link. There's a PDF version for you right there. Um, and then, if you need anything in the meantime, just get at me. I'm here for you.
Can I make a
Joven,
short
go ahead.
announcement?
Go
Yeah,
for it.
so I already put it inside of the chat. My number and email, Asia already contacted me for any classmates who needs any help or support with assignments or anything like that, like the book, anything like that, just reach out. I'm open to a group chat.
Cool.
So, I understand that everybody has a lot going on, multiple classes, so forth and so on. So if you guys are open to, starting a group chat to support one another, I'm with it. My contact information and also Asia's contact information is inside of the chat. So
Awesome.
reach
Uh,
out.
yeah, fantastic. Thank you so much, Joven. I'm sure that your classmates appreciate that, and I do too. I think it's a great thing that you all are helping each other. That's super important. So if you like, what I can do is I can create a group for you all in the classroom. So you could use that as your free and open forum for you all to talk inside the classroom if you want, if that's the easiest for you. We'll just call it class group.
That would be nice because if anybody wants to meet during class time on Wednesdays and maybe, do our classwork or read through a
Yeah,
chapter. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely, and I'm all about it. So what I'll do is I'm going to assign all of you to that group, and just feel free to use it as a way to talk, freely about whatever, and hopefully that'll help. So I'll do that. I'm doing that right now. So you might, I don't know if the system will give you a message or what, but so I just created a group inside the classroom called Class Group Discussion. And all you got to do is when you're in the classroom, just go ahead and click on that course groups on the left. Should be
All
able
right.
to.
Thanks, Doctor.
Hey, my pleasure. Absolutely. Okay. Anything else I could help you with? You good? Okay. Well, as always, I sincerely appreciate your time. I apologize about going over time, but I feel that we cover a lot of ground. You're all doing very well in the class, and I'm sure that you all keep it up. You got 2 assignments that are due on Sunday, as you know. We got Chapter 5 quiz, Chapter 6 homework, 2 attempts on each one, as always, right? You know, I try to make it as free flowing as possible. If you need anything, let me know. Email me, call me, set up office hours. Otherwise, I hope you all have a wonderful evening. I'd like you to stay safe, wash your hands, continue to do the right thing, and I'll see you again next time on Monday. Thank you all so much. Appreciate all of you. Have a great night. Take care. Bye-bye.